turning the page on paper invoices as e-invoicing takes center stage in the nation's digital transformation. In a bold effort to strengthen the tax system and accelerate Malaysia's digitization aspirations, the Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia, better known as HASiL, is leading the charge. With promises of transparency, improved efficiency and fairer compliance, the question now is, are businesses ready for this new era? This is Money Matters. Good evening, you're tuned into TV3, where you can also stream on Tonton. I'm Zahir Kelvinong Abdullah, and we'll dive into what e-invoicing means for businesses, the challenges ahead, and how the government is supporting SMEs through this transition. Joining us for this week's episode is the Inland Revenue Board, or HASiL, Chief Executive Officer, Datuk Dr. Abu Tariq Jamaluddin. Datuk, welcome to Money Matters.
Thank you, Kelvin. Yeah.
Pleasure having you with us. Can I ask you firstly on, can you explain briefly about what e-invoicing is all about?
Thank you again, Kelvin. Great to be here. The opportunity to explain about the implementation of e-invoice in Malaysia. Going back to your question, I think as we know, invoices form the integral part of any business transaction. As a seller or as a service provider, there's a need to issue invoices. So under the new e-invoice system, one of the key requirements is for the seller or the service provider to get the invoice validated by the Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia. So that's a key requirement under the new system. So to do that, of course, there's a need to transform the paper-based invoice to a more formatted, structured digital form. So once they already have a digital form of invoice, the next question then, how can they transmit the digital form to Inland Revenue Board for validation? So we have two modes of transmission. One through our portal, e-invoice portal, which is free. This is ideal for SMEs, where the volume of invoice is low. And we also have the API integration, where the accounting system or the invoicing system of the businesses interface with our system, e-invoice system. And of course, this is more suitable where it involves volume of invoices. We know that e-invoice is not new. It has been implemented by various countries like China, South Korea, South America countries like Mexico, Brazil, and Chile has successfully implemented e-invoice. So the only difference is whether it is mandatory or voluntary. So here in Malaysia, it is mandatory by phase. Phase 1 already started in August last year for companies with a turnover of more than 100 million. The second phase is January this year. The annual turnover between 25 to 100 million. And the third phase, July this year, 5 to 25. And the bigger or the number of businesses would be phase 4 and phase 5, which is all the SMEs. Phase 4 will be 1st of January 2026, and phase 5 will be July 2026.
Yeah. You mentioned those countries just now that have already implemented e-invoicing. So where Malaysia is concerned, did we have to look at other countries' models before we implemented ours?
Yes, of course, we studied their model, which model which is perhaps appropriate for us to implement here in Malaysia. We have decided on CTC model, where there's a requirement for invoices to be validated by the tax authority. That's the model that we have now.
Okay, so looking ahead, the main objective basically for the government or HASiL for implementing invoicing, what is the main objective here?
Okay, of course, the goal is to modernize and transform not only the tax system, but also the business system. We know there's a change from paper invoice to real-time digital system that helps not only businesses but also the tax authority. But when you talk about objective, Kelvin, I think it is also important to look at the benefits of e-invoicing. And on this, I think I would like to look at it in three perspectives. Perspective number one will be to the customer, people like you and me. Okay. On the implementation of e-invoice, basically we are going to get a clear digital record of all our purchase. For example, if you buy books, computers or sports equipment, or even if you pay medical fees, if you request for e-invoice, all your data will be captured in the My Invoice app. So on this, I would like to encourage all Malaysians to download the My Invoice app, because all transactions, all the purchase will be captured. If you ask for e-invoice, it will be captured in the app. So the benefit of this, of course, when you have to file your tax return, there's a question of relief where you can claim relief, and all this can be evidence of the purchase. That's one for the customer. And for the businesses, of course, we hope that it will minimize their mistakes in preparing invoices. We know that they're going to have a proper record with all this process where it's going to be digitalized. They're going to basically secure sufficient record for them to prepare for audits, be it audit from the Inland Revenue Board or other agency. And for the tax authority, the benefit clearly that we can monitor all business transactions. Right. We know that when we validate all the invoices, we are going to get a lot of data. We were able to monitor and we were able to ensure that all taxpayers pay the right amount of tax.
Right. Looking at the businesses, Datuk,
yeah.
Of course you're saying this will be something new for a lot of businesses. So can we talk about like the resistance of change? Because all these businesses, they are very used to paper invoices. So are companies, especially the bigger organizations, are they reluctant to adopt e-invoices because this would basically involve management techniques and changes? Would you say this is the biggest challenge facing all these organizations?
Right. From our engagement with all the companies, be it big companies and small companies, they have different issues. For big companies, the main issue obviously on integration of their system with our system. So because of the complexity of their system, so they need technical expert to assist them to integrate with our system. That's the major issues. But I'm happy to announce that they are in the first phase. The compliance level of the first phase is more than 90% of companies have adapted to the new system. I think we have managed to help them to comply with all the requirement of e-invoice. So that's the major one. Of course, the volume of invoices that they have to deal monthly. So that's another issue that they need to ensure that the accuracy of the data transmitted to the tax authority is the right data.
But that falls on them. The onus is on them to give the right data, right?
So that's perhaps one of their concerns, to ensure it's the right data and to transmit a huge data to us. So in terms of numbers. So this has been, I would say, resolved. The first phase where more than 100 million companies are able to comply with the requirement under the e-invoicing regime.
Yeah. Datuk, hold that thought. We've just got to go for our first break. Stay with us. We're talking to the CEO of HASiL, Datuk Dr. Abu Tariq Jamaluddin. Stay with us. Welcome back to Money Matters. We're talking to Inland Revenue Board or HASiL Chief Executive Officer, Datuk Dr. Abu Tariq Jamaluddin. Datuk, can we continue by asking you the latest update on the implementation of e-invoicing?
Okay. I'm pleased to share, Calvin. As of yesterday, we have received more than 570 million invoices. So from 104,000 taxpayers. So interesting to note that out of 104,000 taxpayers, 40,000 is from SMEs. So they are supposed to join e-invoice in the phase 4 and phase 5, but they have joined early. So that shows the confidence of the system and the real support from the SMEs with regards to these new initiatives. But we know that coming phase 4 and phase 3, there'll be a big number of businesses will join. And for that, we know that it involves SMEs. There's a need for us to help them, assist them. And we have two solutions for them. One, as I mentioned earlier, we have the portal, which is free for SME. And we also have My Invoice e-post system, which is an accounting system, basically for them to record all transactions. But the difference is this, the e-post system will help them to transmit invoice to IRB for validation. So we are going to promote this e-post solution for SMEs in order for them to be able to submit invoice for validation. That's one. And the benefits of e-post is also free, but it's only given to businesses with a turnover less than 750,000. So that's basically the scope and the businesses that can enjoy the benefit for e-post system.
Right. So with your engagement with the SMEs, Datuk, their main concerns is actually what? Is it the same like you mentioned just now about big corporations in terms of like, transmitting their data to HASiL?
Yeah, not really. To them, I think they really need a bit more time to adapt. And that's the reason I think the government has made an announcement. Earlier, the implementation of e-invoice is only 3 phases, but it has been expanded to 5 phases, which I mentioned earlier. The 4th and the 5th phase will be next year. So this is basically to facilitate taxpayer with a turnover of 1 million to 5 million, and the other group will be turnover up to 1 million. Right. So that will be next year. So that is the decision made to assist the small businesses. And also there's an exemption. Earlier, the exemption is for businesses with a turnover of 150,000. Now it has been increased to 500,000. So 500,000 and below, there's no requirement for them to comply with e-invoice, but we still encourage them to join this new system because we know the benefits when they digitalize their business, so they have a proper records for their business, not only for their business, but also for them to comply with all the tax requirement.
Right. Datuk, is the government providing any incentives to encourage the transition to e-invoice?
Kevin, currently we have 2 basically tax incentive on deduction and on capital allowance. On deduction, what have been announced in 2024 on ESG expenses. So expenses relating to e-invoice is also eligible to be part of the 50,000 expenses that they can claim from 2024 to 2027. So on capital allowance, the normal capital allowance for IT instrument, equipment, is basically 4 years. So it has been reduced to 3 years. It's also an announcement made in order to ensure that SME is able to claim capital allowance earlier than the normal capital allowance period.
So looking at what you mentioned just now, you said 90% of the organizations already got themselves involved in e-invoicing. So with this rollout, is it more or less along the timeline that you have implemented to ensure that this will happen?
We anticipate that the first phase, second phase, they have the ability to comply with all e-invoice requirement. Of course, there's there's still a request for us to give a sort of exemption on certain issue. But generally, as I mentioned, they are able to be on board into the system, expected. I think they have the ability, with all the assistance given by the Inland Revenue Board, they are able to do it. And we are happy with the performance, Kelvin. Yeah.
Okay, good. You also mentioned exemption. So basically, who is exempted from e-invoicing?
So as I mentioned, 500,000 and below, they are exempted for now. So there's no requirement for them to comply or submit invoices to the tax authority. But we still encourage them to join. As I mentioned, it's good for them, digitalize their business records and have a proper record, not only for their business, but probably for reporting purposes.
Right. How do you keep track, Datuk, of all these organizations, whether they comply or don't comply with what you have implemented?
Okay, we know in terms of a turnover of a company because of earlier reporting records. We know the number for 100 million and above, 25 million to 100 million. So we have all the number, we have all the data. We communicate with them, we email them. We do a survey to know whether on their readiness to join this new initiative. So basically, we know who's supposed to join the e-invoice initiatives and when they're supposed to join the initiatives. So what we do normally, we'll just communicate with them. As I mentioned earlier, during the transitional period, we are not going to penalize them. There's a lot of concession. We have a 6-month concession where they can just submit consolidated invoice. So not individual invoice. Consolidated invoice means transaction within a month. So they just need to submit one invoice for that particular month.
Okay.
Except for certain industry that they must issue individual invoice. So there's a 6-month concession period that at least they must submit one invoice for 1 month before they are ready to submit individual invoice.
Okay. Datuk, again, we've got to go for a final break. Hold that thought. We're talking to Inland Revenue Board, HASiL, Chief Executive Officer, Datuk Dr. Abu Tariq Jamaluddin. Stay with us on Money Matters. Welcome back to Money Matters. Datuk, what does HASiL see after the full implementation of e-invoicing?
We hope that full implementation will be in 2028, right? Where all companies are on board, it's already on board, and they are able to transmit invoices to the tax authority, and public can also ask them for e-invoice documents. So we hope in 2028, public at large will be able to get e-invoice. Once we have all this data, okay, one of the long-term benefits, we believe that we will be able to minimize shadow economy. Okay, we know that because we already know who's this, of course, the seller and also the buyer. So we will check whether the buyer has basically report the right amount of tax based on all the purchase they made. That's one. And to the businesses, we strongly believe that with a good, proper records, there won't be any issue on audits. The compliance level will increase significantly because there's no room for avoidance since all the record is already captured by IRB. So I think it is a very important move, not only to transform business to digital, but also to ensure there's an increase in compliance on tax matters.
Right. Okay, can we look at how HASiL is ensuring that businesses, especially those new to digital platforms like SMEs as well, how can they trust the security and reliability of the e-invoicing system?
Right. On this, Kelvin, I think we have to look back on all our e-services from that we have basically offered to public. We have e-filing, which is basically quite a number of volume of transaction of e-filing. So I think the same rule in terms of security will apply to all our e-services. So similarly for e-invoicing, we apply the same rule, same protection, same security requirement in order to ensure that all data that we receive will be protected.
Okay. So far, have there been any security breaches? Can I use that?
Alhamdulillah, Calvin, no, at the moment, there's no breaches with regards to data that we have received.
Okay. And now, what steps is HASiL taking to educate the public and businesses community about e-invoicing and its benefits?
It's an ongoing process. We know that we are going to face phase 4 and phase 5. The numbers is about more than 200,000 business entity that probably need to be educated by revenue. We have a lot of seminars and also engagement with the group to explain the implementation of e-invoice, the apps that we have, the apps that we offered to them, which is free. We want them to embrace all the new apps that we have. And we hope, Calvin, at the end of mid of next year, we can get the same compliance level. The numbers is very significant compared to phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So with all the engagement that we're going to have with them, we hope we can get a high number of compliance for the other group.
So looking at what you mentioned about digital security, because based on what I've read, there has been overseas invoice tampering on e-invoices. They said that it can be altered or modified if systems are not properly secured, of course affecting their integrity. Would this be something that falls more on the organizations to look at, or how HASiL will assist?
I think that's a serious concern, obviously. That's one of our main consideration in terms of ensuring that the integrity of the data is always preserved. As I mentioned, we will comply with all the security requirements. Of course, there's always an attempt to breach what we have. But I think we always have to ensure that we all the security requirement is fulfilled.
Right. Yeah. Okay, you said that there were other countries as well that's already implemented e-invoicing. So keeping up with regulations, especially Malaysia, so the regulatory landscape for e-invoicing obviously is evolving, and things and regulations change all the time. So would you say that this would be one of the main challenges for e-invoicing moving forward?
In terms of the legal requirement, I think we have a sufficient legal requirement for e-invoicing. to ensure that businesses comply with all the requirements. Of course, we have a penalty provision for failing to comply. But again, I think once they are on board, and once the system is already there, so there's no, we foresee that there's no reason for any non-compliance in terms of transmission of data to the Inland Revenue Board, because the system is already there. So we hope that we don't have to enforce the existing provision on penalty for implementation of e-invoice in Malaysia.
Right.
Yeah.
So going back to SMEs, because we've spoken to the SME Association, and they're saying that digitalization is something that's very, very not so difficult, but they had to implement it, especially during the COVID period.
Yeah.
So where e-invoicing is concerned, for SMEs that do not have as much cash flow as possible, does it mean a total change in terms of how they do work and employing more people to assist them to do this?
That's one of the concerns from the SME. Yeah, probably they don't have the person to look into this matter. Perhaps they also need to incur bit of cost to have all the instruments, enable them to transmit. Even though we have the e-post app, even though we have the free portal, they still need to have the appropriate instrument for them to go into it, to do it. But what we can do what we can do is basically, other than the incentives given for tax purpose, is to educate them, to give them all the assistance for them to embark into this new journey.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Datuk, thank you very much for appearing on
You're
Money
welcome.
Matters. It's been a pleasure having you with us, and of course, it's been very informative for you in telling us about e-invoicing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So thanks again to Datuk Dr. Abu Tariq Jamaluddin, Chief Executive Officer of Inland Revenue Board, or HASiL. For the past half an hour, you've been with us on Money Matters. If you miss any part of today's show, you can always catch it up on Tonton. I'm Zahir Kelvinong Abdullah. Thank you for watching and have a great weekend.